Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Regina, and I'm the Programs Committee Co-Chair of the Women's Professional Network, which serves the Thomas Edison State University and New Jersey State Library community. We're excited to celebrate Women's History Month with a series of interviews of women in the New Jersey higher education world. We are honored today to be joined by Professor Rebecca Mark. Professor Mark was the former chair of the English Department, Associate Dean, and Director of the Center for Academic Equity at Tulane University. She is the new director of the Institute for Women's Leadership at Rutgers University. Professor Mark is a scholar and professor whose research addresses women's writing and cultural representations of trauma. Professor Mark was a Posse mentor from 2010 to 2014, the founding executive director of the Newcomb College Institute from 2006 to 2008, a founding member of the Deep South Regional Humanities Center from 2001 to 2003, and the founding director of the Center for Academic Equity at Tulane University. She received the Public Humanities Achievement Award from the Mississippi Humanities Council for directing the Civil Rights Conference Unsettling Memories in 2004, the Weiss Presidential Fellow for Teaching in 2014, and the Greenberg Family Professor in Social Entrepreneurship from 2014 to 2018. Thank you so much for speaking with me today, Professor Mark.
Thank you. I am honored to be here. So nice to meet everybody.
Thank you. To start, could you please tell us about your degrees and how you came to be interested in your field and what made you want to pursue an academic career?
Well, I think I was doomed to be an academic my whole life. When I was a little child, I used to go take walks on the wood and give lectures. So, somehow some people just know what they're supposed to do. I was very lucky to go to a new college, a SUNY purchase for college. And that was a wonderfully heady time because there were faculty members from Yale and from all over the East Coast who really believed in a new model for education. And that new model was small classrooms, individual instruction, independent studies, and we had a fantastic time. And it just happened to coincide with the moment when feminist education was becoming a real thing. And I had these very exciting women professors who were involved in feminism, and we were reading, and every month a new book came out, and we were just thrilled to be. So as I was doing that, I was choosing between being a theater director and being a professor. And I was so excited by the ideas that I chose professor, and I went on to study at Stanford University, from SUNY purchase to Stanford University, and got a degree in American literature. And when I was studying American literature, it was a moment not only when literary scholars were reclaiming women's writing that had never been actually even published before, but we were taking some women writers who had been around for a long time but hadn't been studied, and we began to, and so the field was just burgeoning. I was very lucky. I got involved with a professor, Arnold Rampersad, an African-American literary professor, and he really encouraged me to move on and study Eudora Welty, and I became a Eudora Welty scholar and a Southern literature scholar. My first job was at St. Olaf College in Minnesota, where I had an amazing time with the students there. And I actually came out as gay to the faculty and student body. So I began to find my voice as a speaker for underrepresented groups. And that was a very important part of my academic career, and the teaching, which I love. So as I looked at higher education going in as a young scholar at St. Olaf College, I kept thinking, we're not putting in enough emphasis on innovative experiential learning. And that became my forte. And I then got a job at Tulane University, and that was where I had a 30-year career at Tulane University. And I was always excited about making higher education a more accessible place for all our students. So I was the, as you said, the founding director of the Institute for Women's for the Newcomb College Institute, and then the Center for Academic Equity, and now the Institute for Women's Leadership at Rutgers. And it's been a very exciting moment to change careers. So I think I answered more than you asked, but.
No, that was excellent. Actually, one of the things that interested me that you said, just as an aside, was that you were choosing between being a theater director and a professor. And I actually find it's interesting, like, as I'm working on interviews and stuff like that, or just preparing for public speaking, the theatrical background is actually very, very useful and helpful.
The theatrical background is very useful, and almost all my work in the classroom has been based in performative cultural representation. So I've taught classes on mask making, I've taught classes on storytelling traditions, on propaganda, which is a performative act, on ways in which humor functions. So women's performance traditions. And now the course that's sort of become the signature course that I'm teaching at the moment at Rutgers is the Women in Stand-Up Comedy course, which is great fun, a little more serious than you would think, and a little more dangerous, because when people are comedians, they're right on the edge. But I have found that the two have gone together beautifully. I was already directing by the time I was 15 years old, and I directed a theater company from 15 to 26. But it was a time that was exceedingly difficult for women to break through into the theater directing field. So I'm really glad I made, I always say I'm glad I made the decision I made, because I can't stay up that late. So not that academics don't have to stay up so late, but only once in a while when we have a particular deadline. The world of theater is still one that fascinates me. I think that theater practitioners are the one that push us to see the world in a way that has not yet actually manifested in our real world. So my dedication has been to artists who take us to the next level. I always ask my staff, and I ask people I'm working with, for instance, what would a world look like that was not patriarchal? What would a world look like that was not racist? What would a world look like that was not classist and did not, make it almost impossible for people to move from one class to the, that kind of thing. So that is visioning. And the visioning part of our job is the most important part. And that's what artists do. That's what visual artists, they let us see something that's never been imagined before, or put two things together that we never thought of putting together. So I do think that we have a deep responsibility to the arts, and that the arts are also very significant in making sure that we do not forget to imagine. It sounds silly, but when you get all involved in policy and tomorrow's meeting and agendas and everything else, we forget to be imaginative. And the number one thing that makes humans human is imagination.
So you mentioned that after a 30-year career at Tulane, you've recently moved up here to New Jersey and to Rutgers. Could you tell us what your interest was in coming to New Jersey, and what specifically about Rutgers interested you?
Well, I'd say there's three things that made it easy for me to make this leap. And it really has been a leap. And I was only here for 2 months before we shut down for COVID. So it's been a serious leap. One is that this is a public institution. I am very proud of Rutgers University because we serve more underrepresented, more first generation students, first generation in that their families are first generation to the United States, and first generation that they're the first ones in their family to go to college. We are in one of the most diverse communities in the world. People don't know that. There are ethnic groups in New Jersey, as you know, from all over. And I find that just so exciting. I like that it is an institute for women's leadership, because we cannot change this world until women are leaders, until women serve in every single capacity as leaders. And we're starting to see this happen. I mean, the news is phenomenal. There are more women prime ministers, more women CEOs, more women in politics, in every branch. But it's because places like the Institute for Women's Leadership have been pushing to have this kind of representation and this voice at the table and putting us on the map for the past 30, 40, and 50 years. Douglas College has been a very key college in establishing women's education early on, and then pushing to ask, what does women's education? We have one of the best STEM programs with the Big Ten. So the Institute for Women's Leadership is a consortium of 10 institutes, centers, a department, Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, and Douglas College. So where would I ever get to be in a position where I get to be with all those phenomenal women doing phenomenal things? Center for Women in Global Leadership has programs against violence all over the world. They have, we have the Center for Violence Against Women and Children that works here in New Jersey and on federal projects that see how we can end violence against women and children. We have the Center for Women in Work. We have the Center for Women in Arts and Humanities. So as you can see, this was a job of a lifetime. And I was very, very honored to get this job. And to move us forward, I think we're at a moment when the Institute for Women's Leadership needs to become more diverse in not only in who is in the leadership positions, but more diverse in what it is that we are going to do to further racial and social justice. So couldn't be a more exciting, very, it's a very challenging time, but very exciting. So I left a phenomenal career at Tulane, colleagues that I love, but I've come here and met exceptional people. And I would say to younger women who are moving into leadership roles, know when you need to pick up your canoe and move it to a different river. So there's times when you're going to just go down the river and hit whatever waves and things that you're going to hit. And then there's times when you just need to pick up that canoe and move it to another river. So I have done that. I haven't regretted it for one moment. I can't wait to actually meet people in person who I've only met online. My doctoral assistant, postdoc, we worked together for a full year, and she moved on to another research project, and I've never met her in person. So it's wildly bizarre, but yes.
Yeah, I'll bet. But hey, you get to experience education, creativity, and innovation in a whole new way.
I do think that higher education is at a critical moment where we are trying to open the door as wide as possible to be as inclusive and accessible as possible. So students who would have fallen through the cracks before don't have to fall through the cracks, because this notion of excellence, the idea that this student makes straight A's and can do everything and has no trouble accessing anything and has family money or whatever, those are the people who should be tomorrow's leaders. No, tomorrow's leaders are with the students who have to work 40 hours a week and don't have the easy access because they have learning challenges, or they are, they can only take one course a semester. That's what's exciting to me, is when higher education really meets the needs of those students. And I can tell you, it is going to mean changing curriculum. And we're a little resistant to changing curriculum, but we've done it so many times. We had a whole new African-American literature and history programs developed during the civil rights movement. We've had women's culture and history programs that have transformed the way we think about the history of gender. And we are now in a phase of really looking at the complexity of gender. So we can do it, we will do it. And that's where I'm at an institute, you push for change. You push for change, new ideas, new ways of looking at things. You are not simply sitting there and saying, oh, we did that last year and it worked. So you have to say, we did that last year and it's working. How can we make it better? How can we serve the needs of more students? We have some graduates from our Institute for Women's Leadership Scholarship Certificate Program. We have over 250 graduates, alumni. They are in every area of leadership throughout the country. We turn to them, they turn to us. We've had quite an extraordinary run with those students. So
That's
can't
wonderful.
be happier. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. And it sounds like it, and it sounds incredibly exciting. I know I had a lot of fun going through the IWL website and looking at some of the potential areas of study. And one of the things that really intrigued me is kind of to your point that you made when you were answering the last question. One of the questions I found was, how do outsiders become leaders? How are you guys studying that? And how do you interest people who you would qualify as outsiders in joining a program of study like what the IWL has to offer?
Well, one thing is you have a university like Rutgers who makes more people insiders. So everybody, there is no outside, no inside. I love that the Center for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, run by Anna Brantz and Corinne Castro, works on our board, our IWL board, and they always remind us, one community. So we are, as humans, if COVID has taught us anything, we are one community. Every single person has experienced, the possibility of getting COVID, the possibility of infecting others. But within that one community, it is always important to look and see who has the benefits, who has the abilities. So you're asking a very good question. And so we are, we look for that extraordinary student. We look for that student applying to the IWL Media Mentoring Program or the IWL Scholar Certificate Program, Leadership Program. And we say, what makes them different? And we make sure we have a diversity in terms of interest, in terms of gender identification, in terms of background, in terms of class consciousness. We purposely choose for diversity. And that's been a very successful model. And the students hear about it and they have been, we get very large numbers. One of the things we're doing right now is Sasha Tanner, who runs that program, she's the program coordinator for that program. She has been really successful because it's a one-on-one, 2-year, very intense program. And you ask the question, how do you teach leadership? So if we take a moment, we just stop there. How do you teach leadership? So our notion, probably you've heard, leaders are born, they're just people who are like that, or, but that really is a very cookie cutter notion of leadership. Leaders are not the loudest people in the room. Leaders are not the necessarily bravest people in the room. whatever bravery means. Leaders are people who can see a clear vision and work with others. So Charlotte Bunch, who is a very famous professor at Rutgers, started this leadership program. And she teaches really what I would call feminist leadership. And that leadership model is collective, it's communal, it's bringing people together around specific ideas. And part of the leadership, a 2-year course, is that they do a social action project where they see what this is a problem in our community and how am I going to work with others to solve it. So this, we have the leader model, right? The leader model is big guy in the front or big woman in the front, CEO at the table, and he's the leader or she's the leader. And that is a non-functioning model for today's society. We have to think much more in terms of listening. A young person I know came to me and said, well, I didn't mean to be the leader of this organization, but I am. And how many of us said, it's like, whoops, I'm the leader of this organization because, and they said, can you tell me, it just seems like leadership is serving and listening. So yes, leadership, what if we have a model of leadership as serving and listening? And you hear some of our new Congress representatives, some of the new people that Biden has brought into the administration and that other Republicans have brought into the administration, they are servers and listeners and caretakers. So right now we are focusing on care, because if we think of ourselves as one human community and we're caring for one another, then leadership takes on a very different model. And this moment in Texas, where we see the people who are most successful are the ones who are saying they need water, they need food, and they need it now. And it becomes a logistical issue, not I'm the great visionary, but it's how do I get water, food, heat, someplace safe to stay for 1 million+ people tomorrow. And so to me, that's one of the most beautiful aspects of leadership, is that it is not an ego thing. It's not about me or you or the teacher in front of the room. It's about each individual person who's meeting at that given moment, we are all in this room together. Why? Let's figure it out. And the person, one thing that leaders have to do is they have to make decisions. They have to be able to say, I want those 2 trucks to leave tomorrow, full of water, going straight to Houston, and then we're going to have 2 behind that, and 2 behind that, 2 behind that, and it's a mathematical. People always want to think of leadership in a very heady, I do too, heady, visionary way. And it's often a mathematical problem. Like we have $2 million and we've got, 100,000 people. How are we going to divide this up in the most equitable and efficient manner? So all these notions that, my generation, other generations don't want to think about, like logistics, efficiency, budget, all of that, they go into leadership. And we do in our classes have people come in, talk about speaking, talk about budgeting, talk about personal budgeting, so that the students can really move into jobs, move into the family economy and the communal economy and say, I've got this. I have the skills and the sense of my own position within this. And the number one killer of good leaders is ego.
Yeah, it's very interesting, your approach, because in like doing practical leadership and saying, oh no, I'm not a leader, like whatever. It's one, it's a skill, and two, you're right, it is just all about listening, cultivating patience, being an approachable person. And these, I think too, that really helps make leadership seem a lot less intimidating to people, because they say, oh, well, I can do that.
Exactly. And also, some of the best leaders are introverts. Just the most incredible people I've worked with, quiet, introverted, not dramatic, not performative. They're just getting the job done. And I have enormous respect for that. I do think there's one thing you absolutely can't be a good leader unless you have compassion. You can be quiet, you can be slower than the average bear, you can be, meaning, you don't like do 12 things in 1 minute, you're not a multitasker, you can be very, boxed off, you can have all that, but you must have compassion. And I think what's sad for a lot of gendered male, or the people who define themselves as gendered male, is that they think compassion shows weakness. And the best leaders, the ones, the presidents of universities, the CEOs that have been most successful, are the ones who are compassionate. Every single thing shows that if you're compassionate, you get better yield, you get people staying in their jobs, you have less turnover, you have more continuity, you have working as a team. All those things are economically useful as well as practical. And yet it's a simple thing. I care about you as a human being, and I am compassionate to you. So when somebody comes in and says, my mom just fell and I've got to take out 5 weeks to take care of her, and there's nobody else to take care of her. If you say, I'm sorry, the business just isn't, it's just not going to work. You are hurting your own business. If you say, let's work it out. Can you work from home part-time? Could you call in once a day if you didn't have access to internet? Can you make sure that you're coming to, could you get somebody to take care of your mom when we have meetings? These are the 7 meetings I need you to be at. If you work it out with the person, that person, first of all, they're going to feel very good about their job. They're saying yes. And then the second of all, you're going to get somebody who's, and this is what people don't talk about, their experience of taking care of their mom is going to help them. So when their experiential knowledge is taken into the picture, so that's, as higher educators, when we look at this wonderful fact that my women's stand-up comedy class, I have people from every single background you could possibly think of, every gender, every racial identity, ethnic background, and their experience comes into the classroom. I barely have to teach. I have to sit back and create an atmosphere in which that experience comes forward. And it's exciting. Yeah. So the more universities to really take the 3 pillars of diversity. It's not diversity. You can't just say, we're going to make everybody look different. You got to be diversity, equity, and justice. And justice is the one we're just getting to. And justice means, I know that you did not have the same privileges, background, financial support that I did. And therefore, we're going to create an equitable playing field, first of all, but second of all, we're going to teach social justice. We are going to show people who might be racist or bigoted or xenophobic. We're going to show them, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Look at this history. Look what happened in Texas, at the Alamo, for instance. Terrible history. Look what happened to Emmett Till and his mother in Mississippi. Look what happened when women suffragists began to organize, but did not allow their Black sisters to be on equal footing. So each time, I mean, why, you ask the question, why academics? Because basically each time it comes down to education. The minute you know something, you're like, oh, I don't think of it the same way. We, as a country, Black Lives Matter and the protests and the COVID and equity of the COVID movement, and where caregivers are and essential workers, and that some of us get to sit up in our apartment and get all our food delivered and some do not. All of this was our education. It's like we took Human Caring 101. And if you missed the course, you really had your head in the sand, because it was hard to miss this course. And the people who got so lied to and so propagandized into believing in white supremacy, and I feel very, very sorry for them, because they did not take 101. And it's a very important course. It's a life course. So I'm way off the topic, and I know it's important. So.
That actually answered, a lot of parts of questions that I was going to ask, which is really fantastic. And I think that you're right. I think that we are in the midst of kind of a social paradigm shift. That's how one of my professors taught me to think about things, where we are realizing that people are different and have different experiences, and that experience is born out of inequity and unequal access. And we are starting to come to grips with this, which makes it really exciting and interesting in education. So I want to ask you, based on that and based on the program structure that the IWL offers, in terms of mentorship and mentorship education, is that an important part of developing this kind of thinking? Is that an important part of kind of moving this kind of education along? And how is mentorship structured within the IWL? And tell us some more about that.
Well, mentorship is central to women's education, to feminist education, to moving women into leadership roles. We've had a WINGS program that worked with big companies in New Jersey, including Wells Fargo, Johnson & Johnson, and many other companies for years. This mentorship brought together people working in those companies with our students who were their mentors, and they got to see what working in that company was like, and going through a really exciting, we're beginning to shift that mentorship program, because there are a lot of other mentorship programs now, but it was central. And the way we do everything at IWL is one-on-one, carefully focused. We have people who run the mentorship programs. These are not things that we do lightly. This is not, we check back, how is it going? Is the mentor all right? Is the mentee all right? What have your sessions been like? And we have a very clear moment when we will say, is this working? How is it working? We do assessment. Right now we're doing some work on, we have a very exciting media mentoring program, and that got started by Allison Bernstein. It's the Allison Bernstein Media Mentoring Program. You can see it online, and that is graduates of our program or of Rutgers in general, who want to go into the media field, and they mentor with women who are already very established people in the field of media that have great jobs as TED Talks, at, NPR, really, top-notch people, and they are able to work with them and find out what works, what doesn't work. And we make sure that there's a great diversity in that, so that we are increasing the number of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color who are working in those fields. And it's been a highly successful program. At any given time, there are 40 pairs of mentors. I'm not sure it's 20 or 40 total. And then so the WINGS program, the media mentoring program, and then within the IWL leadership program, there's a lot of mentoring that goes on with professors, with alumni, et cetera. So I would say it's a great question, and it's the basis of IWL is our mentoring. And at COF, they mentor women who would like to run for office. At CWGL, they have women involved in global women's leadership. At Posse, they have internships. As every single one of our units, Douglas has a wonderful mentoring program from younger scholars to older scholars. So I think women have been doing mentoring beautifully for years. Feminists have been doing mentoring beautifully. We're at a point where some of the mentoring has moved to see these online programs. And we're sort of like, shouldn't we? We're not sure. So, it's always the next challenge, the next way of looking at it. But yeah, I couldn't, some universities have made it using those online programs, which do match up students with faculty, staff, alumni, older students. They have every single student at huge universities come in and they have a mentor. And that, some mentors are better than others, but it's a great model. So.
Wonderful. And I just have two more questions to kind of wrap things up. The first question, does IWL do any community outreach or education that way? And also, does the consortia study the effects of outreach programs for education like this?
We have had a program class that had students interned and worked with community organizations for the summer, and they were in a class. It's in a pause moment because we've got to figure out the staffing, but I'm very dedicated to it. So we'll see how class transforms. We have all of our students do their social action projects. So we have 20 students at a time doing so. Each one of those social action projects lives at the library at the IWL. Those organizations that have worked with us are community partners. And what we're moving toward is solidifying those community partner relationships. And then every single one of the IWL consortium has community partners. So if I were going to say tomorrow, somebody would say, you have $1 million grant, you can hire whoever you want, it would be a community liaison person for IWL, which we've done a lot of that work through professors, through staff members, but we haven't ever sort of consolidated it in one vision. So yes, it's central, and it's just amazing. If we were to just take a dot and then draw a circle around it, circumference 10 miles out from Rutgers, we would have such a amazing group of women leaders, whether they were CEOs of companies, whether they were the teacher at a local elementary school, a nurse. We have a direct affiliation with the nursing program at Rutgers. So that's terrific. We just have leaders everywhere in higher education. And then remember, we have Robert Wood Johnson medical schools. So we have the whole I always forget, RBWJ Barnum, I'm not sure if that's right, but and so we have the potential of working with multiple organizations, some of them social justice, domestic violence organization, some of them domestic workers. Our Center for Women in Work has a multi-year fantastic research project that they're doing on domestic workers that we would very much like to highlight and to give and have been doing. They're getting, their research is going to be published. And we have an external advisory board that's one of the best I've ever seen, and they connect us directly with the community. So as I said, we're working toward that one community notion, not the community, and then we're Rutgers and there's an ivory tower and all that. I think a feminist vision of higher education is one community.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then
my idea comes from Anna Branch and Dice. So. And then the president is quoting John Lewis and the beloved community. So Rutgers really understands that our positioning in New Jersey and our positioning in this massive metropolitan, complex, exceptionally diverse area means that we have to take social justice as a very clear focus of moving forward.
Wonderful. And then finally, I wanted to ask you, what is your closing advice for somebody who's interested in studying women in leadership in an academic setting? Somebody who kind of wants to do what you do.
Well, anytime you get a chance to have a leadership position, jump on it. If you're an undergraduate and you're able to run your local organization, and as that young person said to me, I accidentally fell into being a leader. And then the way that I became a leader is to look at the leaders that I most respected and start to ask them questions and mimic them and say, it worked for her, I'm going to try it. And you start to take on the role and to know that is a great, now at IWL, I am simply one small keg in a history of leaders that is just extraordinary. Allison Bernstein immediately before me, Lisa Hetfield, who was the acting director for a number of years, Mary Hartman. There's just so many people who have done this job. So you just see yourself, you just ask yourself, what could I do? What is it that I can do? And just be maybe a little small little piece adding to this beautiful structure that's already there. So if you want to be a woman leader, I would say to a young person in their teens or 20s, find something you're passionate about and begin to work. Leadership is work. It's not glory. It's not like, oh, somebody gives you a crown and you get to be queen. It's, as you know, because you're doing it right now and having these interviews, it's a lot of hard work. So start working and start hanging out with those people you really, really respect. And I learned so much from my friend Sylvia Fry, who ran the Deep South Regional Humanities Center. I was part of that team. And being part of that team, I watched her have these very large visionary structural ways that she was going to move that organization forward. And it was a risk. She took risks. So I learned from her two things. One is use your mind. And she was a visionary. So she used her mind and she came up with these wonderful ways of bringing together regional humanities centers throughout the Deep South. And then she also developed structures. So she was not afraid to say, let's have somebody from France, translated slave trade, working with somebody from Oberlin's museum on, enslaved people who left the South and came to work. So the Underground Railroad, she just brought together a lot of connections, and I learned from her. But I could go back and I could mention probably 20 feminist scholars, leaders, administrators, students. You learn a lot from students. And I would say, learn from them. I was never embarrassed. I wasn't like, has to be my idea. There's no such thing. Number one, there's no such thing as your idea. If you're thinking of it, it's because 12 people before you have thought of it. It's true, because it's just the way the accumulation of knowledge creation works is, the moment that somebody finds that cells can split or whatever it is, it's because there have been 500 people before them who have been painstakingly going through this. So heroes is a dangerous concept, and leaders have to realize, bloody feet have worn smooth the path by which we came here.
It's so interesting. Like, when I remember, one of the most important things that I ever learned from leadership was actually over at the New Jersey State Archives, looking at their Civil War collection. And they have the regimental records organized by regiment. And of course, all of the officers, most of what they're doing, they're pushing paper, they're moving supplies, stuff like that.
That's right.
So much of leadership is administrative in nature. And so I remember one day flipping through all this, and I was like, so this is what leadership is.
You think, really? It's like kind of boring. But it is, for me to come in and be able to do something as small as help us upgrade our all our technology in the conference room so that it was state-of-the-art technology. That's just a little step. And in 3 years, that technology is going to be like obsolete. But for 3 years, we'll have cutting edge technology. So you do your little bit that you can at the moment. And, when being a chair of a department was a wonderful training ground, because you are there to serve, and you are there to help those young professors who need to make it through third year review and tenure and the next step. And if you got all involved in some, I'm the chair of the department nonsense, you wouldn't remember that you're there to do these 5 things that need to get done by tomorrow.
Yeah. And
also, you're only as good as the administrative assistants and directors and program coordinators who are doing so much of the work. Associate directors. It's a team effort. It's constantly a team effort. And sometimes you have to make really bad decisions, like, who do we hire? Who do we fire? Is this budget line going to get cut? They're not fun things. But day to day is just a team. And I've been lucky to have like 3 amazing teams in my all the executive director and associate dean positions.
That's wonderful. And I think that the collaboration you've constantly talked about throughout collaboration, building skills, and most importantly, having compassion, and that being the most important leadership trait. And it's really interesting because the last interview that I did for this series, we talked extensively about that, having compassion for students who are coming, and who need a break because, like you said, something happened to mom. Well, we don't want to lose you. What can we do here? And how important that was. So it's wonderful. And it's wonderful to learn more from somebody like you who is teaching leadership, particularly to women, and making it more accessible and less intimidating, and making women realize this is not what I thought it was. This is not what I thought this was going to be at all. So it was a pleasure to speak to you today.
Pleasure to speak to you. And I don't actually teach the women's leadership courses. Someday I hope I will, but we have many faculty members who teach them, and Charlotte Bunch and Lisa Hetfield and Sasha Tanner have all done extraordinary jobs. So thank you so much.